let the record show that Anthony Moeglin's not the only one who will stand outside in the cold and do a post-game video, as he did last night for Ohio State. I'm here doing it in Cincinnati, where the Browns fall to the Bengals 24-6. I almost said 7, but they missed that extra point because Dustin Hopkins is just the gift that keeps on giving. We'll talk about him a little bit, but obviously a lot of different things to dissect here. Do want to remind you guys, as always, to follow along with the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel, where many of you might be watching this right now, or you can check out the website, si.com/NFL/Browns, where we got all kinds of stuff for you there. I put up my takeaways from today's game as well, so you can find that over there, among some other things that transpired throughout the game, including a milestone for Myles Garrett. But, Anthony, we knew the big story coming into this game was going to be all about Dorian Thompson-Robinson and just the evaluation process on him, what the Browns are going to find out about him, whether or not he could be a potential starting quarterback for this team in 2025. But there's going to be a lot of questions just in general about what that quarterback room even looks like. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that we got any clear answers today, because it sounds like Kevin Stefanski is going to go right back to the well next week. But Dorian didn't look very good, and the offense looked even worse. And there were some notable things that I think stand out about this game as to what really proved how miserable the offense was today. Maybe most notably that Jerry Jeudy's drop-off from putting up the numbers he was putting up with Jameis to only having 3 targets today, 2 catches for 20 yards. I mean, that's egregious. Like that tells me right there that there were some problems today, and on top of the fact that they only managed to score 6 points.
Yeah, there's a lot of disappointing things you see from this game, right? We came into this, we talked, you and I, right here 4 hours ago, saying like, hey, Dorian's got to do these things to make you feel good, right? He's got to operate well. He's got to operate well under pressure. He's got to not turn the football over. Well, he didn't do any of that, right? He still looks like he is a rookie quarterback. And now, he's played in a handful of games. He's 2 years into the league. Like, this is the end of his second year. So he's basically a third-year guy. And, like, some of the stuff that you're seeing from him are what, rookies do in their first 5 games. You're still making really bad interceptions. You're still fumbling the football. You're still not – he looks so uncomfortable when he drops back the pass. It feels very frantic at times. And that's just not the way that it needs to be. And if he wants to prove to not only himself but to this team and this organization that he can be around for a while, like, this stuff has to change, and it has to change fast. Like, his leash is very short. He's got 2 more opportunities, and then the Browns are going to move on and really try to find the answer there if it's not him. So it's like, man, the urgency's got to be really, really high, because kind of like what you said, you didn't answer any questions today. You didn't solve any problems with this performance. I mean, it wasn't very good. Finished 20-34, 157 and 2 picks. Like, I don't care who you are, what the team is, if you're playing for a 15-2 team or a 3-12 team. Like, that's not a good day, and it's really disappointing from him.
Yeah, and his numbers for his career right now, 1 touchdown now to 9 interceptions. I think he's led a couple other touchdown drives. Like today, for example, he led a touchdown drive. It just wasn't him scoring on it. He had a chance to lead another one in the first drive of the game, which we'll talk about here coming up. But yeah, like I wanted to kind of ask the question in this conversation, Megs, like, did we learn anything about Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and are we going to learn anything about him the rest of the season? And I think the thing that we're trying to learn is, like, is he part of this quarterback room in 2025? I think that is the thing that we're trying to learn. Like, is it worth bringing him back even as a backup? Does the team feel it's worth bringing him back even as a backup? And I think those things will kind of answer themselves. I thought it was interesting, though, because, like, if you wanted a game where you're going to have multiple turnovers like we saw today, you could have just started Jameis Winston, and the offense probably would have looked a little better. I get he played bad last week, and he had some of those dud games. The Chargers game was another one where he didn't really move the ball all that well, and he had a bunch of interceptions and turnovers, and it led to a loss. But the games in between where he was putting up the numbers and at least giving you a fighting chance, to me, like, this screams they are totally in evaluation mode with DTR. Like, they're like, we're going right back to it, even though he had a turnover-laden performance and we lost again to the Bengals against a defense that's one of the worst in football. We couldn't move the ball. Kevin Stefanski being quick to answer and say, as long as he's healthy, he'll be our starter next week. I think that kind of tells us what they're trying to do with the rest of the season at that position specifically. So yeah, like, I think the thing that we're trying to learn is I believe that the team knows what they have in DTR already. I don't know if there's like a ton of evaluation going on there, but I think they're trying to find out, like, is he even somebody we want to keep around in a backup role, or is this somebody that we're going to maybe look to trade, or whatever the potential options might be for somebody like him.
Yeah, and I'd say something like, we keep saying, like, what did we learn today? Did we learn anything? And maybe we learned that we already know exactly what he is, and maybe the Browns, right, are giving him a chance to change that narrative, to go in 3 starts where he knows he's going to be the quarterback. When you texted me in between when D'onta Foreman fumbled the ball and you're like, DTR's hurt, like this is a disaster, because it would almost be like just like a total, like a waste of a day, because we all know what this is. Like the fact even that you said Kevin already said that he's going to start, like this is his audition to stay on this football team. And like you texted me, you're like, dude, DTR's hurt, he's in the 10. I'm like, this is as bad as it gets. You know, the win doesn't matter. It's like, holy cow, we can't. This season's going so bad that we don't even have the opportunity to evaluate our third backup quarterback. You know, obviously he played the rest of the game, but you know, it frustrates. I feel really bad for him too, because you heard his quote after the game, and if you didn't, you can go seek it out. But like, he just is so frustrated, and he just almost felt like he's so frustrated in himself, just talking about what good quarterbacks do and what he's doing. And you know, your heart breaks for him because you wanted him to be so good, but you know, maybe it's just maybe he's just not the answer, and that might be the answer for the Browns too.
And listen, he's a 5th-round pick. I don't know what people really expected there anyway, but yeah, like you do feel bad for him because you know he's trying. He made the comments this week about how he was treating these like an audition, and you hate to see it go this way. Sounds like he's going to get another chance at least next week. I'm guessing he probably does finish the season, assuming he stays healthy, and we'll get a chance to kind of see what the future holds for him as a Cleveland Brown. You mentioned, though, that opening sequence, and yeah, I don't know if there was a moment or a series of events that like summed up the Browns season better than that first drive. First play of the game, 66-yard run by Jerome Ford, gets them down inside the red zone. I think they're at like the 12-yard line or something, 11-yard line. A couple plays later, they get a first down, 1st and goal at the 1. And then the first play, 1st and goal from the 1, a D'onta Foreman fumbles the ball, and then the Bengals turn around and go march 99 yards down the field on you and score a touchdown to take the lead. Like it was a 14-point swing, and it ate up about like a half of the clock of the first quarter. And all of a sudden, it went from, wow, the Browns have some momentum. And I honestly wonder, like, that the game could have gone differently for DTR and the offense if they score on that drive, because DTR maybe settles in a little bit. He's a little more comfortable. He feels good. You have some confidence. And instead, you fumble. And like I think from that moment on, it was like, this game's probably over. Like the Bengals flipped that script so quickly because of the fumble. And it was a perfect example of like how turnovers can really just kill you, which we all know. But like seeing it play out in real time like that, it was like, man, like that's a big momentum swing. And then on top of that, again, I think it just summed up the Browns season. There's these moments where you're like, oh, there's something there with this guy, there's something there with that guy, but it's not consistently enough to produce winning football, and that's why they're 3-12.
And I'd also add too, to your point of like, hey, does this game go a little bit differently? I think it does, because not only do the Browns players start believing in themselves, but the doubt sets in for the Bengals players, who are a horrible. There's a horrible defense that just held us to 6 points, and the doubt creeps into them. Like, you know, it's going to be on us if we don't get this done. All the things we said in the pregame, like this is a playoff game for them, and then you're like, nope, they punched the ball out. And then what's even worse, what's even with salt on the wound, Spence, was the first play was we jump off sides. And it's like, dude, like, come on. Like, you know, in Pee Wee football, you're taught that if you're inside the 5-yard line, they're going to go on a hard count. And I promise you, or I would guess that Cincinnati didn't have a play on, and Joe Burrow was just barking out signals, and he got Diabate to jump, and you're just like, oh my gosh. And then one after another, Chase Brown 20 yards, Jamar Chase catch, T. Higgins catch, Yoshi Vash catch, and then all of a sudden they're at 1st and goal, and then Joe Burrow does a Superman play and gets tackled while throwing the ball and touchdown to T, and you're like, here we freaking go. Like, this is going to be a long day.
Yeah, and I know there was a little controversy on the touchdown throw from Burrow too, because it looked like his knee was down when he threw it. I saw the replay on Twitter. It looked like his knee was down. Kind of interesting. We saw it in the stadium too, and I was kind of like, that's dicey, but they called it a touchdown anyway. And like I said, I think from that moment on, it kind of changed the game. I think that maybe just the offense couldn't get out of neutral. I think in the first half, I tweeted this out. After that opening drive, they had 4 other drives in the first half. That was it. They only got 4 possessions. And they went 3 and out, 3 and out, 3 and out, 5 plays, 15 yards and out. At the half, they had 0 passing yards. It was a disaster. It was a bad first half. Second half, there was a little bit more promise. And I know like Joe Bitonio and some other guys talked about how they felt like there were some good signs in the second half. but good signs. Just there's been good signs of things throughout the season. It just hasn't equated to wins, and it's just equated to the same sort of problems on offense: the turnovers, the penalties. Every time it seems like they take a step forward, it feels like they then take like 20 steps back, literally and figuratively, because they also take a step forward and then get flagged for like 3 penalties in a row, which also cost them a touchdown in the second half, because there was a holding call that wiped the touchdown off the board. And then 2 plays later, another holding call and then an interception in the end zone that ended the drive. So it's like this team just can't get out of their way. And I think today was another example of like, yeah, 2 bad teams maybe, or I guess one bad team, one really bad defensive team, and a really good offensive team. And in the end, like the fact that the Bengals held you to 6 points, I mean, that's pretty damning for any team, because they're a bad defense.
They're a horrible defense. Like they're one of the worst defense. They are like the worst defense in football, and they just kind of shut you down. And like we say it every week, like this is what I say it a lot. This is what bad teams do. Bad teams jump off sides. Bad teams false start. Bad teams have red zone turnovers. Like just don't. You just want to bang it into their head somehow, some way. Like you're in the red area. Don't try to force the football. Don't turn it over. Field goals are okay. And I guess maybe not. We'll get to the field goal situation here in a bit. But like you're just like.
Well, in fairness, Dustin Hopkins didn't miss a field goal today.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I stand corrected, Spence.
glass half full, you know?
Yeah, glass half full. You got me. But it's just like, hey, the Browns consistently do what bad teams do, and every single week. Like, look back at the schedule, man. You could look at 3 or 4 games. This one maybe not, because obviously the season's over, the mindset's different. But look at 3 or 4 games, whether Deshaun was playing or Jameis was playing, and there's 1 or 2 plays that change the football game, and that's the way it is in all football games. And for the Browns, every one of them has gone the wrong way this year because they make critical, dumb mistakes, and it always comes back to bite them. And today was no different.
Real quick on Dustin Hopkins, since we sort of hit on it there, or at least brought it up. I love Dustin Hopkins. He is a really good dude, and I thought he was a really good kicker based off of last year. And I don't have a problem. Here's what I'll say: I don't have a problem. I know fans are outraged on social media with the way he's played this year, rightfully so. He struggled. He owns that every time he talks about it, which is I think maybe one of the best things about him. He doesn't shy away or hide from the fact that he's had a miserable season. I'm okay with like accepting the fact that this has been a bad year. And yeah. I don't. Maybe we call it like giving him a mulligan because he had such a great year the year before, and kicking can be so volatile year to year. Like it's a tough thing. Bubba Ventrone's talked about how there's just so many factors that go into kicking. So I don't know if the answer is just like flat out cut him. I know the Browns don't want to go there because he has a $5 million dead cap hit, and for a kicker they don't want to take on a $5 million dead cap hit. So he's going to get a mulligan regardless. So I'm willing to see if he can kind of bounce back next year. What's tough though is like. He keeps having these conversations about like, I think I've corrected it. I think I found the thing. The week off really helped me. And then he still comes out and misses the kicks. And so at some point, he keeps saying it's not mental. But at some point, I got to wonder, like, what's going on there and how do you fix it? And again, I said the same thing with Jameis when we had the conversation about can he be the quarterback for this team next year. When the games start mattering again, September of 2025, how long of a leash does he have if he's going to be missing those kicks early in the season? And Browns fans aren't going to trust him. So he's going to have to, again, I'm fine finishing out the season with him as the kicker and giving him another shot next year, and it's all fine and good. But next year, when the clock resets on all these things, you can't afford that. And again, it's just another mark of what's been a miserable season for a bad team this year. But again, that stuff will cost you in 2025 if they're really trying to be competitive.
Dude, Spence, it's like, I don't know. When I used to play basketball, you go in cold streaks and the hoop looks like it's like this big. Like those field goal posts to him have to feel like they're this far apart. Like he's just has zero confidence when he runs out on the field. And again, like you said, I've never talked to him in person, never met him, but everything that I see from you and everywhere.
Oh no, he's a really genuine person.
Seems like he's a really good guy.
I can 100% back that up. Like I would die on that. I don't even know if it's a hill, but like I'll take like he's a great dude. And I appreciate the fact that he owns his mistakes. But at some point, it does have to get corrected. He knows that. Like he knows that's the name of the game. It's a make or miss league at that position. It's a tough sort of role to be in. I don't envy anybody. I wouldn't want to be in that role, but like that's the job. And I will say this too, Megs, real quick. I know I cut you off. Sorry.
No, you're good.
I also think Justin Tucker struggling this year has actually helped Dustin.
Yeah.
Because like if it was anybody else, they'd be like, oh, it's just this other kicker. But the fact that Justin Tucker's struggling that's an example for people to point and be like, if even Justin Tucker can struggle and they're not like kicking him to the curb, maybe we need to give Dustin a little bit longer leash here. So I think that's kind of helped him this year because his struggles have been notable, but I think they've been overshadowed by Justin Tucker's struggles.
Yeah, a lot of kickers have been struggling as well. I mean, we watched Harrison Butker last week miss a 27-yarder. Like, me and you could go out. You could walk behind you, go to the 17-yard line and kick a field
Cade
goal.
York missed a field goal today.
Yeah.
He also made a 59-yarder.
But dude, did you say Cade York?
Yeah, I said he missed a field goal today, and then I said, but he made a 59-yarder.
I was gonna say, dude, that was
ironically broke his career high, which was the run he kicked against Baker and the Panthers. You can't make this stuff up, man.
No,
it just gets worse and worse.
Dude, it was so poetic. It was so Browns. Like, our kicker he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn from an inch away, and Cade York, who we just watched come out on the field, and it felt very similar to how we feel right now with Dustin Hopkins. He came onto the field, and it was like, you have no idea if this thing was going 10 rows into the dog pound or if it was going through the middle. And then he just drills a 59-yarder, and you're like, you've got to be kidding. That was there was a lot of Browns things that happened today, and this game specifically, that's up there for one of the most Browns things I've seen in a very, very long time.
That is very true. Very fair. I will say on the offensive side, and then we do need to talk about Myles Garrett. We got a couple of other items to touch on, but I did think Jerome Ford had a nice game today. He was kind of the highlight of the offense, especially in a day where Jerry Jeudy wasn't getting a lot of targets. You had Jerome Ford catch 5 passes for 39 yards, I think it was. He had the 92 yards rushing. I thought he was going to break 100. I actually had in my takeaways piece, I had written out 100 because I thought he was going to get there.
You did. It's your fault.
And before I hit submit, I had to go back and be like, oh, shoot, he only got to 92. I missed it there. But no, listen, I do think these last 2 weeks, Jerome, I know everybody likes to do the thing of like, we'll take away the big runs, and he didn't really have that great of a game. He only ran the ball 11 times. Ken Dorsey is allergic to running the football, it seems. That was his problem in Buffalo, too. And so they don't really get a lot of opportunities anyway. But I thought he made the most of those opportunities, especially when one of them was 66 yards. And he's making such a habit out of the big runs that I'm willing to kind of accept, like, okay, he can do some things. I don't know if he's like a franchise-changing running back, or we can't measure him to Nick Chubb. That's impossible. But I do think like he still belongs on this team, and he still is he continues to prove that he is a reliable player for this Browns offense, and he was good today.
Yeah, and it's amazing. His home run plays, like you said, they happen so often that they're just a part of his game now. You think back a couple times, Indianapolis last year, Kansas City last week, big one today. Like, he's got that home run ability, and it's awesome to see. You love to see that out of him. Good, you hit both those stats perfectly: 11 carries, 92 yards, 5 catches, 39 yards. Solid day from him. And out of all of the negative spots on that offense, he was one of the bright ones. There's a couple guys you see. Well, I think the whole team, that's unfair of me to say. The whole team hasn't quit. Like, and that's one of the cool things about it. Like, they're still playing hard. He's definitely one of those who's like really trying to make it happen. And it just sucks that it's all of these games are coming in losses.
Yeah, I will say I still don't get that sense in the locker room that guys are quitting. It is still, as good as Jerome was today, it does still feel just inexplicable that Jerry Jeudy only gets 3 targets in the game. I mean, the guy's been on a tear, and again, like the byproduct of the new quarterback. And Jerry, he's very political with it after the game. He wasn't going to throw DTR under the bus. He talked about like working with him this week and how they can kind of correct some of these things. But yeah, man, like it was brutal that the quarterback change kind of interrupted the flow that he was on, the heater that he was on, because he's been great. And it just stinks to see his numbers take a dip today because of the byproduct of that change.
Yeah, second in the NFL in the last 7 weeks, with over 750 or 760 receiving yards, and then comes out today. You only get 3 targets. Like, that's not right. And that's one of the things that I think is Jameis's blessing and curse. Like, he knows he's very NFL quarterback in the sense of like, hey, our number one guy needs to get X amount of targets, whether he's double, triple, quadruple covered, he needs to get some targets. So he would force feed in some situations. But when you do that, that opens it up for Jerry to make big plays and to do that. The flip side of it is, hey, coach, he was double covered and we only threw it to him 3 times. And you're like, well, yeah, you just leaned right into what the Bengals wanted you to do. And like, you want to say that's something you can learn, but again, this is the end of year number 2 for Dorian, and that's like one of those things where it's like, that's not acceptable. Like, that is not acceptable to do, to take your game, to have you take your biggest play threat and your game breaker out of the game completely.
On the defensive side, I actually thought overall the defense played fairly well. It was another one of those games where I think they kept you in it as long as they could. They were pitching a shutout in the second half up until that sort of garbage time touchdown pass to Jamar Chase after the jumping off sides there by Miles. So like other than that though, which was kind of like just a fluke play anyway, like the defense again they tried to keep it as close as they could. Kept it pretty. It was basically a 1 or 2 possession game for most of the first half, most of the second half, and then they pulled away late. But the big story, of course, is going to be Myles Garrett and the fact that he eclipsed 100 career sacks in his career. He actually has 100.5 sacks now. He became the first player to do so before his age 29 season. I don't think he's technically not the fastest to do it because there was players who did it in less games than Myles did. I think he's like maybe 4th on that list or something. But the other key stat that he accomplished by getting a sack today was that he joined Lawrence Taylor as the only 2 players to post 5 straight seasons of 12-plus sacks. And when you're measured against that guy and you have numbers or that are comparable to him, that's saying something because people consider him Bill Belichick. He talks all the time about the greatest player he ever coached or seen was Lawrence Taylor. And so for Myles to be in that stratosphere is incredible. It also puts in perspective the fact that Myles has, I don't want to be harsh here, but he has kind of wasted away on a team that has not been able to do more than win 1 playoff game. And that is unfortunate. It's not quite Joe Thomas levels of, egregious because he never even made the playoffs. But you want to see Myles obviously have that success. And he talked about that after the game. He said people talk about Lawrence Taylor because he did all that and he won. That's what I want to do as well.
Yeah, it gives you such Joe Thomas vibes. And like even after the game, one of the questions he was asked was, "Hey, why do you keep playing?" He goes, "I'm not quitting on these guys. I'm not quitting on this organization. I just want to know that we're going in the right direction." And that's totally fair. And it scares me and you as a fan of like, what happens when they go back to him and say, "Hey, we're going to go get Kirk Cousins and we're going to do something or we're going to re-sign Jameis." And he's like, "All right, I'm out." And you're like, well, shoot, like you don't want to waste it because he's one of the best. He's the best player that we've had on this defense and in my lifetime. It really is unfortunate because while you say that he's only 29 in NFL years, he's getting up there, and hurts me to say I'm about to turn 28, and that really hurts to say that out loud. But
yeah, Migs, how many sacks do you have in the NFL? God,
zero. Ask me how many Division III interceptions.
But you did beat Mount Union. Let's go.
Well, yeah. Ask me how many Division III interceptions I've thrown. I got a pretty nice record there. But it's crazy. You don't want to waste this whole career away. But they got to make changes fast. And frankly, Spence, like this past week of him, in my opinion, putting the pressure, the Browns' feet to the fire, is good. Like, hey,
yeah, there's only so many guys that can do that.
There's only one guy on this team.
Maybe Joel Bitonio because he has nothing to lose at this point in his career. But I would say it's Myles, maybe Nick Chubb, and him. Like that's it. And Myles is number 1 on that list by a long shot.
And if they come back and don't take him seriously, and we lose him, like you want to see a fan base just totally like abandon something, it would be this. And while it's equal parts scary that it is to like, hey, thank you for doing this because we all want to get this thing going in the right direction. And he's like the one guy who can lead that change.
Yeah, and he talked about that. He kind of talked a little bit about his comments on Friday after the game today, clarified a couple things. He kind of continued to reiterate, like, he doesn't know what the plan is. He wasn't insinuating that he knows some grand plan. He wants to see it after the season. And it's more so not even like they have to, like, give him a step-by-step. I think he just wants to kind of talk things through and get a sense of, like, hey, are you bringing back Deshaun? Are you going out and trying to get a quarterback that you think can help us win right now and maximizing this window, or are you tanking? And if the answer is tanking and rebuild and all this different stuff, I don't think he wants to be part of that. But again, this is a much longer conversation we can get into down the line. I don't think this organization is tanking because if they tank and they lose, people are getting fired anyway if they're coming back next year. So yeah, like we'll see. The other thing he clarified because people thought his commentary on the offense that I thought was pretty interesting on Friday was kind of a shot at Deshaun and just the way that the offense has been the last couple of years and sort of like pass heavy. And he talked about run the ball more. Maybe, and he said it wasn't supposed to be that way. And, he's more so thinking about, like, will Deshaun even be ready for the start of the season? But I'm going to be honest, man, like, I thought that was a pretty telling comment that he went back to, like, 2020, 2021, 2022, 2021. And he was basically like, when we did this, our offense was good. And we were winning and going to the playoffs. Like, let's go back to that. Like, it was basically a statement of like what we've tried to do the last couple of years. It wasn't working, and we got to figure something else out on that side of the ball.
Spence, he doesn't make mistakes like that. It's not that is a calculated. Like he didn't just come up.
Yeah, Miles is a very calculated person.
Very calculated, dude, and he's very intelligent. He's a smart guy. Like he's not going up there to I accidentally made a headline. No, he's going up there to make a headline. He knows exactly what he was saying.
And to be clear, like I agree. Like I don't think he was just trying to take a cheap shot at Deshaun. I don't think that's what it was. But it was, I think, a commentary on like the offense they tried to build with Deshaun as the focal point hasn't worked. And so let's go back to what was working and getting us to the playoffs. And so I can't blame him for feeling that way because he saw the success they had when they did those things. The last thing I kind of want to get to, Megs, as we look ahead to these final 2 games of the season is whether or not we have anything left to learn about this team. Because you talk about evaluating players down the stretch here, DTR being one of them. I just don't like, what are the things that you're looking at? Who are the guys that you're really evaluating to kind of get a sense of like, you're here, you're not here, you're back, you're not back, this guy can stay, this guy can be a starter, this guy can't. Is there anything that comes to mind for you aside from obviously the obvious of like DTR and maybe like a Cedric Tillman if he gets back in the lineup and if he can kind of keep doing what he was doing this season?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation because you look throughout the roster and you know kind of the answer on a lot of these guys, right? You start in the offensive line, you don't really know what you got at the tackle position, right? You can't figure out what DeJuan Jones is going to be. Obviously, Jed's out of town, so you want to make sure Wyatt Teller gets out safely and without injury. You're going to have to figure out the center position. You're going to have to figure out right guard. Hopefully, Zach Zinter, maybe he starts getting some run. But if this is Joel Bitonio's last year, like he's going to play out his last 2 football games and head off into the sunset. So it's like, all right, you're kind of set there. Wide receiver, you want to see what Elijah Moore maybe has. And you were kind of juxtaposing that with Cedric Tillman. And if Cedric Tillman's got a bad concussion, like why bring him back to like impact his health when you only have 2 meaningless games left? So you know what you got in Jerry Jeudy. You really don't really know anything else. Maybe Mike Woods potentially in the receiver room. Tight end, you're pretty set at. You're going to have Njoku again next year, and you'll probably have a couple guys behind him defensively. You know your defensive line. You know your linebackers. You know your secondary. Maybe you want to see a little bit more out of Martin Emerson, but it's like you kind of know what you got. And outside of DTR, it's going to be a little bit of a rinse and repeat. You're going to add some pieces in free agency next year, but I don't know, and it sucks because I don't know the right answer to your question. Is like I don't really know what you're watching outside of seeing if 17 can play quarterback.
Yeah, I mean that's the big one. Obviously, I think there's a couple guys that made plays today, like Mike Hall Jr. What's he going to kind of bring to the table as a future piece? He had a sack today, his first sack. Isaiah McGuire had a sack today. Like, can those guys be those depth pieces that we know are so important to Jim Schwartz defenses? Assuming that Jim Schwartz is still here, I think he will be. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like I there's a few ancillary pieces, but overarching wise, like I don't know that these next 2 games, I don't think are going to teach us anything massively new, unless DTR really goes off and proves he can sort of be this future quarterback. But I just don't see that, and I think the Browns kind of know or aren't expecting that either. So, all right, guys, we appreciate you stopping by for this conversation.
Can I get one thing in?
Yeah, go ahead.
24-10 was my prediction. I was close.
That's right. Dustin Hopkins missing that extra point. You would have been a little closer if he had made that extra point. Man. Yeah, you were close. I always think about that after the game, like how close was my prediction? And I was close with the Bengals score, not even close at all with the Browns score. 6 points. Man, if they had scored that first touchdown, though, it could have been different.
You know what, dude? And you know what's funny? If I'd have been ever right one time with me picking the Browns, I would have been hanging banners. So I guess I got
even in a loss, yeah.
Yeah, I'd have been hanging banners. But hey, I guess I was a little close. I wasn't even right, but I was close.
Well, we were also close to getting a Bailey Zappi game today. We thought for a moment there on like the 5th play of the game.
I was bummed, and then I was like, Zappi?
Oh, boy. All right, guys. We appreciate you stopping by. As always, we encourage you and implore you to go on over to Cleveland Browns on SI, the website, or it's really the actual URL, si.com/NFL/Browns. You can check out any of our written content. Like I said, I got my takeaways up there. I know we had a piece up on Miles and his 100th sack. I'm probably going to work on something here post-game with his comments on that, which you can find over at the website. You can also stick around at the Cleveland Browns on SI YouTube channel and see more content like this, our pregame conversation, other postgame conversations, other content throughout the week, and of course, the postgame press conferences from here in Cincinnati, including that Myles Garrett audio, Kevin Stefanski, other players from inside the locker room, and much, much more. So be sure to do that. Also, like, follow, subscribe to our YouTube channel, however you can. But yeah, that's going to do it for me in Cincinnati for Anthony Moeglin. I am Spencer German. We appreciate you stopping by as always, and be sure to keep on following along with the Cleveland Browns on SI for more coverage of your Cleveland Browns.